All right, good evening. Welcome to this live. This is part of my blog of what is going on. So, what is the story for today, right? My camera is slightly clearer. Okay, so what is the story for today? And I found this story really interesting. Now, granted, it happened a few days ago. This was Saturday over the weekend. So, it bubbled up only on like Monday, Tuesday. That's when I noticed it. I posted it on Instagram. We got quite a few reactions from it, and that got me thinking. And I was like, okay, let's take a look at this story because I really want to know what you think. And I do know from, the analytics numbers on our YouTube page that we have a lot of NRIs who watch as well, right? People watching from, say, the US and UK, Australia, UAE. So this is a story for you guys because I want to know what you think. Now, that aside, we're going to get to that as to why Indians are going overseas because we have Mr. Rajnath Singh, who is the defense minister of the government, who has said people don't need to go overseas anymore. We have whatever we want in India. I'll take you through that. But before we go through that, first, please like this stream. Secondly, we are setting a target for this stream, which is the super chat window. So if we do 10 super chats through the course of this live of 100 rupees or above, including the exchange rate, then we'll host a special AMA where the people who are doing the super chats will be able to ask questions. All right. So if you look at your live chat window, right next to it, there's a little dollar sign. That's the super chat. You can click on it, you make the payment, it pops up. So we're aiming to do 10 super chats through the course of this conversation. All right, let's get straight to what is the story for today, right? And popping that up on your screen, this is what happened. So, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was speaking at a convocation of a college on Saturday, and he said that young people no longer need to go overseas to pursue their dreams. They have the means and the resources to fulfill their aspirations right here in India. I'm going to quote what he has said. He said, the country has faced numerous challenges after independence. An atmosphere of despondency prevailed for various reasons, causing our youths to be afraid of dreaming. They only dreamt of US and UK. For decades, they had to go abroad to fulfill their dreams. However, times have changed. The time now is to build the India dream. So if you have the means and resources in the country to fulfill your dreams and aspirations, that is what is needed. I thought it was fascinating, right? And I'll tell you why. Because on social media, a lot of the responses to this were, in fact, political. People writing back, and one person actually counted, I think it was on X or Twitter, who said that there are 25 BJP ministers, senior ministers, whose kids are right now studying overseas. And here you have, one minister who's telling us you don't need to go overseas anymore. Then in that case, why are all of your kids overseas right now? So that was one of the questions that came up. So apart from that, though, if we actually examine, and I thought this is a good time to examine these two things because I do know from having conversations with friends and family who currently live overseas that there is a bit of a question in people's minds. I recently sat down with a cousin who's an NRI who said, we went and we worked really hard, and now we look at India, and it seems like the people in India have a better life because you have Blinkit and you have Swiggy and you have a lot of help at home, whereas we have to do our own bartan and we have to scrub our own toilets and we have to do all of our work ourselves, and it doesn't seem like the better life anymore. Now, having said that, I must point out that when you talk about having a better life because of Blinkit and Swiggy and help at home, that's not necessarily because India is doing well. That would necessarily be because there is cheap labor that can be used to disrupt markets in this way, which is why it doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. But here are the things, though, that are going for India. India is growing faster than most other countries. India has seen a significant rise in our startup culture. So there is a strong sense that because India has such a robust market, that if you're going to start something up, perhaps do it in India. There's a booming digital economy with our whole UPI culture and the fact that payments have been made so easy. It's perhaps easier to, start a business like that in India. There are ample opportunities for innovation and for employment. And we've got now advancements in defense, in health, and one could argue a global standing as well. That, Indians are now being respected globally for being good at tech and being good at finance and for being good at health and healthcare and many other things. But why is it then that people are still going overseas so much? Let's take a look at some of that data. I want to take a look at exactly where we stand in comparison to what Mr. Rajnath Singh has said about going overseas. How many Indians are actually going overseas? Um, the obvious numbers to look at are the American numbers, right? Now, the United States is home to 4.8 million Indian Americans as of 2022. India is the second largest immigrant group in the US after the Mexicans. Indians also in the US, so people of Indian origin, actually earn more per family than any other racial group, including the white Americans at this point. India has surpassed China as the leading source of international students into the US. So 2023-24, according to an Open Doors report, there were 331,602 Indian students in the US, which is a record and it's higher than any other country. Also, as of 2024, a total of 5.4 million Indians live in the US. Out of this, 3.3 million are persons of Indian origin, which means they hold American citizenship, but they're of Indian origin. So, a really large number of Indians living in the US. Indians also dominate the H-1B category. So, 72% of the H-1B visas, which are visas that allow people to work in the US, go to Indians, followed by 72%. And the next country is China with 12%. And there was a big debate also about this during the Trump campaign on whether or not Trump would support the idea of more and more Indians, more and more H-1B visas, actually being handed out. So India's, the green cards and the H-1B visas, Indians are among the largest group. Also the same, it's very similar, say, for Canada right now, for the UK. We see the Indian community becoming more and more strong. There's one, Government of India data for population of overseas Indians. We'll try and pop that up on your screen as well. How many overseas Indians do we have living in 200 odd countries? We have 3.5 crore people. 3.5 crore Indians live all over the world in 200 countries. In fact, recently, when the Prime Minister, recently it was about 4 months ago, when the Prime Minister was on a visit to Germany, he encouraged and applauded Germany for increasing the number of visas that it was willing to give Indians so that they can go there and work. According to the Ministry of External Affairs in India, we have more than 1 lakh people who are giving up their citizenship, Indian citizenship, in order to take citizenship overseas every year. It was 1.3 lakh in 2018. It went up to 2.25 in 2022. We don't have the latest numbers on that, but that's what it is. There's another increasing data also, just checking on our comment section right now. So, there's another interesting piece of data, and this was actually a surprise to me also when we looked at it. Apparently, of the 29 lakh people who get arrested every year trying to enter the US illegally, 90,000 are Indians. So we have 90,000 Indians, or nearly, who were attempting to enter the US illegally. So now it brings me back to Mr. Rajnath Singh's question. If India is doing so well and we have the ability to meet all of our needs and to sort of chase and achieve our dreams in India, why is it that so many people are still going overseas, or going abroad to study or going abroad to work? Why do people need to do that? You must remember, when you do that, you have to leave your family behind. You have to leave everything you know behind. And you have to go across the world and live on your own and try and figure out how to make it work. Why is that and why does it happen? Again, we put together some data as to why that is. Also asking people in the comment section, why do you think it is that people have to leave India and go overseas, to study or to work? Aman says, having worked abroad, I feel it's an amazing experience. I got lunch from the employer, great working environment, minimal office politics, competition is less, juniors are uplifted. This is actually a great point, and I just want to, just show you some of the things that we sort of put together as reasons for why people still feel the need to go overseas. Um, Significant slowdown in the generation of jobs in India. Just there's been only an increase of 1.5% in FY24 in jobs over the previous year, and we should be having an increase of at least 8%, but we're showing an increase of 1.5% in the number of jobs created. This is according to a report by Bank of Baroda. The article you see on your screen right now, which we've just opened up, and I put this up because, we regularly read articles like this in India, where in Haryana, 1.7 lakh people, including graduates, showed up for a temporary government sweeper job that was paying 15,000 rupees a month. Now, this is an indicator of the lack of jobs and the lack of opportunities that we have in India. One of the reasons why people go overseas. The second reason, as Aman pointed out, is a toxic work culture. As you know, of course, there you have it. And this is the latest in a series of problems, right? We keep discussing it, keeps coming up. Recently, there was an ENY employee, a young woman who lost her life, and that brought up the question again. And then, of course, there was the head of L&T who had actually suggested a 90-hour work week, and apart from the sexism of that statement, he is now being defended by his organization and by his head of HR, which for me, the head of HR defending him actually sort of rang a lot of bells, because this means that they are backing that idea and really putting their muscle behind that idea. And that is really dangerous, because data has shown that people who work more than 50 hours a week suffer not just from mental health issues, but also severe physical health issues, because that doesn't leave you with any time to look after yourself. So obviously, there's a toxic work culture in India. You're expected to work continuously. You're not given time to care for your loved ones. You're not given time to care for yourself. This is again something that doesn't happen mostly overseas, if you are, because there are clearly enforced labor guidelines. And this is not just for people who work in offices. The private sector, of course, has completely abandoned labor laws in India, and they do exactly as they please. And they put all kinds of pressure because of the sheer numbers of people. We're constantly told that if you don't do this, somebody else will be willing to come and take your job. So either you do this or you find yourself without a job. And that is deeply, deeply unfair, which is why I believe a lot of people go overseas. I also want to share with you this article about a protest that took place in Gurgaon for the Maruti Suzuki workers, right? So these are factory workers, and you would think that labor laws are being enforced for factory workers, but it's not happening there either. So you'll remember that in the Manesar plant of Maruti Suzuki, there was actually violence that took place where a bunch of, and this was in 2017, a bunch of workers actually attacked the management because of the way they had been treated. Now there are protests because of this, words, they still have not been reinstated into their jobs. Also, according to those who are protesting, and I'm reading out of this article, a large number of the employees in this factory. So there are 34,000 employees at Maruti Suzuki employees altogether. Only 18% have permanent jobs, and the rest of them are all contractual, temporary student trainees. So basically, what the company is doing is hiring them as contractual or temporary, as an apprentice or interns, basically, so that they don't have to give them the benefits that permanent employees are given. So really, all kinds of ways to bypass labor laws, and there are, as it is, very few jobs that are being created. There was this big article that was actually reported by the Economic Times, where the government was deeply worried about the fact that in recent years, despite all of the prosperity that corporate India was facing, it was not sharing those profits with its employees. So, apparently, according to this economic survey highlight, over 33,000 companies were showing that they had nearly quadrupled their profit before taxes. However, the hiring and compensation growth, which means that the raises that they gave their employees or the number of people they hired, did not match this financial boom. So what you have then is growing inequality, where the people at the very top become richer and richer, but those who are starting off in their careers are just not seeing that kind of growth. And that is another problem. Karthik Chakravarti, thank you. You're 1 out of 10 of our super chat. He said EU is doing really well in research. I think our country should focus more on scientific research to compete with others and avoid brain drain. And this is really important. Unfortunately, not only do we not have enough R&D and research in our universities, those students who are doing PhDs in India are laughed at. And it's said that they take too long and they live on campus and they use up all the facilities. It's almost like we lack an understanding of what a PhD is and why it takes as long as it does and how it is not just an average sort of degree. But you're absolutely right. A lot of our STEM graduates or those who study science and tech, and engineering in India don't have research positions. And if they want research positions, they tend to move either to Europe or to the US. Dinesh Kumar says, I feel cheated because I pay 30% taxes and yet I work under pressure. I need to save my H1B, else they will throw me out of the country. Also, I do not get any benefits after paying exorbitant taxes. My tax funds are illegal. So, Dinesh, do you work overseas? I have not understood that. Okay, so this is an interesting point of view. Dinesh, I think if he works overseas on an H-1B visa, he says that he's under a lot of pressure. He pays 30% tax and he doesn't get benefits for it. So that's the flip side of the argument that we're making. Um, Aman says, except for ESI and PF, employees don't get anything else. There's so much potential, like sponsoring education of kids. There are ways in which workers can be incentivized. That's really well said. Um, Vishnu says every effort is appreciated. Every employee needs to be respected, irrespective of your position. Okay, Ajit Desai says in US absolute poverty is 21%. In India absolute poverty is 3%. So actually, Ajit, I would recommend you check the unit of measure of absolute poverty per day, per whether you say dollar or otherwise. And if you're arguing that India is better than the US, then by all means place that argument, because that's what we're examining here. And we're not taking sides. We're actually trying to figure out why so many people still feel the need to go overseas. That's the question that we're asking. So please feel free to offer any answer you want to offer. The other thing, and I think that this is the rupee to the dollar has always been where, it's always been um, a big exchange, right? It used to be 60, 50, and now it is 86. So if you are an NRI working overseas, every dollar that you make as your salary that you send back home um, adds up to a lot for your family. And let's be honest, the difference between us as Indians and people overseas is that when we start working, we're not just working for ourselves, we're also working for our families back home. So it's about how much you can send back home. It changes the lifestyle of your parents money back home. And so a lot of people realize that when you work overseas, whether it is in the and it actually adds up to a great deal. Just 1 second, I just have to. Sorry, my dad was trying to call me. So actually the exchange rate makes a really big difference for people who live overseas. And I think sentimentally also it matters, because you feel like, okay, if I do this job in India, this is the salary I will make. And if I do the same job and if I manage to do it overseas, I will make this much money. I will be able to send it home. I'll be able to drastically change, what my family is going through. And I think that that's a really, That's a really important thing. Aman Peshawari is our second super chat. He said, "Can we give respect to people abroad? Are given the same respect irrespective of what you do. A sweeper will be given the same human respect, unlike here." Yeah, that's a really important thing as well. That you know, respect irrespective of what you're doing. Sometimes doing a master's overseas, Andrew says, is cheaper than doing it in India. Let's look at other points, right? So I believe that the dollar exchange rate makes a big difference. And now let's look at better quality for life, which is that let's assume you worked really hard and you've done really well, or you're at the beginning of your career in any big city in India or any big city overseas. I want to share this next article with you. And I found that this is quite stark about quality of life, right? This is a survey done by local circles. And it says basically, I mean, look at that, guys. It says 49% of the households who were surveyed have said that they spend more than 2,400 rupees a year in mosquito control. And I know this to be true because I run a similar household. I spend that kind of money. I have a toddler. I'm constantly thinking about mosquitoes. And I'm like, is the mosquito coming from here? Is the mosquito coming from there? Have we done enough mosquito repellent? We're constantly finding out that mosquito repellent could actually be more dangerous than the mosquito themselves. Um, and 37%, according to this data point, spend more than that. 7 out of 10 households showed that, basically said that the local municipality or panchayat had not done any fogging during the monsoon season. So, I mean, this is at the end of the day, the point that I'm making is you could be working really hard and doing really well, but there are all of these other factors about living in India and living overseas that make a difference. Um, Malaria, dengue, chikungunya, which can get you irrespective of how well you do in life, right? How much can you protect yourself from a mosquito? And challenges like that, you know, just looking at this data really, really caught my eye. The other thing, and I keep talking about this a lot, air pollution, water pollution. Um, there's another article that popped up in the Economic Times, and this is triggering, so I will want to give you like a warning on the trigger. It said every day 464 children in India die because of air pollution. I mean, I don't even know what to do with these numbers now. We just somehow just keep carrying on um, with our lives as if nothing is happening. It says air pollution impacts heart disease, lung cancer, diabetes, stroke, COPD. Children suffer low birth weight, asthma, lung disorders. And this was a research paper that came out in 2004. And these are children, these 464 children they're talking about is under the age of 5. And feel free to argue with me about how we are better. But how do we fix this problem? And who's going to fix this problem? And when you choose a country to live in, or when you choose a city to live in, these are all things that come into mind, right? Because you will wind up spending, so you're making a certain amount of money, you will wind up spending more money buying air purifiers and mosquito repellents and ACs and, sort of closing your house in some way from the air, which is almost impossible to do because otherwise you're going to make yourself and your family very, very sick. So I feel that that's another factor that needs to be considered: air pollution, water pollution. There's a third one that we're going to pop up for you. And this has been confirmed by Nitin Gadkari, who is the transport manager, that India continues to top the world in road accident fatalities globally. 1.72 lakh deaths in road crashes in 2023. In fact, there was a recent article where Nitin Gadkari said that, we've improved roads in every other way except this one. So when I go to, international conferences and they start talking about road accidents, he said, I want to disappear because I know that we don't have good numbers that way. So while you live in a country or a city and you're going about your day, these are all things that could hurt you, and these become important factors to consider. The other important factor I think that is plays a really important part is um, just mengai, and we know what's happening with the gas cylinder prices and with the food prices and things like that. But the thing that's really hurting, I do believe, is school and colleges fees, which is going up 14% a year. Now, remember in the beginning we talked about the possible, the fact that corporate India is not passing on raises. So on one hand, you have high inflation, but your raise in your salary is not matching that inflation. But nothing can match this. Nothing can match a 14% year on year bump up for school fees. And school fees are non negotiable. And there's also a massive challenge of the fact that government schools that we already pay for in our taxes are nobody wants to go to government schools. Nobody wants to put their kids in government schools. So as a result, we're making a beeline to private schools or schools that are teaching IB curriculum, and those schools are just charging whatever they please. And so you now have a family budget that's not stretching, that's not making sense. The other thing that really hurts is healthcare costs. Families, budgets can be entirely totaled by healthcare costs. And this point, I must point out that even overseas, unless you are part of a system that gives you free healthcare, unless that system of free healthcare is a robust system, where unlike the UK, where the waiting list goes on for months, so you need a surgery, you have to wait months for your turn to come up. So those systems are also broken. In India, there is a different problem. We have world-class healthcare, but it's extremely expensive. And so it's only accessible by certain people. So these are all problems that will come up when you're choosing between one or the other option of, do you want to live in India or do you want to live overseas? But I do, there is a factor, and I was talking to a few people about it. There is a factor of, like I said, sentiment for your family being able to send more money home. It trumps wanting to be close by because you're like, I can actually afford to send more money home. I know a lot of people who, even though they're terribly homesick, stay back in the countries that they're in right now so that they can offer their kids better options, better schooling, better water, better air, better, various things. And they're hoping that, okay, my kid will get these facilities and then I will come back or something like that. There's a certain also kind of pride and sense of accomplishment, I guess, from living overseas and from being able to build a life overseas. Um, One of the big glaring problems in the US is the gun violence. So I know that there are a lot of NRIs who find this, or a lot of people of Indian origin who live in the US who find this deeply distressing. The fact that someone could carry a gun into a school at any point, and that becomes a huge issue. And that in that particular point, India does win over. Um, Other challenges, traffic, ambulances never reaching on time, um, you know, not getting the if there was a problem, not getting the kind of immediate sort of first respondent care that one would expect to get, that you could be guaranteed of in a different country than in India. So there are several challenges really for why people prefer to live overseas. Rather than living in India. It's an interesting concept now that there are people who are saying that, okay, we want to come back because you have domestic help and you have someone to do bartan and you have someone to do jharu pocha, you don't have to do it yourself. Uh, it's an interesting concept, but it also means that we're not able to create enough jobs so that these people no longer have to do your jadu and bartan. That's the ideal that you want to be working for. In a developed nation, everybody would be so well paid that it would be really expensive to get someone to do these jobs for you. You should be able to, because these people would have so many options before them. That's the ideal that we should be working towards. And I do hope that we work towards that ideal where people have those options right now. Um, there's, of course, the challenge also of tax, which I have not gotten into. Raghavendra is pointing it out. He's saying 60% of what you've earned will be magically eaten up by a combination of, Raghavendra, income tax. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, you pay income tax on the money that you earn, and then after that, there's GST on everything you buy. There is capital gains tax on everything you invest in. So you're paying double tax on everything, right? You make the money, you've paid tax, And then when you buy something or with a service or you invest it, you're paying tax again. You pay property tax, you pay fuel tax, you pay, there's literally tax on absolutely everything. And there isn't enough tax on the people who are very, very rich. So as a result, what is happening is there's a massive gap right now between those who are very rich in India and those who are not. A really important point being put forward by Payal Rajwat, who says, I'm out of India because women's security is a big issue in India. And I mean, I agree with you. I must tell you, Payal, I have friends and family who live overseas who have daughters, like small baby daughters. And they're like, every time we think about coming back home, we read about crime in our newspapers and then we worry about our daughter's safety. And so that's why we don't come home. So obviously, this is also a very, very real thing. Payal just pointed it out for us. Gary says, moved here for my daughter. Payal, I agree with you. Somebody else who calls himself Doofus says, great point. We have to own the responsibility of doing our household chores. Um, I think, like I said in my previous video, right, we have to own the responsibility of being better citizens, which means we have to ask better questions of why this is the quality of life that we are being offered for the kind of money that we're paying. We're paying top dollar taxes, but we're not getting that quality of life. So we're not getting, for example, clean air, clean water, education, healthcare, safety. 5 things. And this is what I believe personally, and this is my personal list. I believe that any government should offer these 5 things to all their citizens, whether they're rich or poor. As long as you are a resident citizen, you should get these 5 things: clean air, clean water, healthcare, education, and security. In India, the richest man in India does not have all 5. And everybody should have all 5. And that is happening because we're not asking enough questions and we need to like push that more and more. Talkaholic says, my nieces moved out of the country. My older niece is a doctor, couldn't find opportunities in Bangalore. The second one moved to Europe as she couldn't find equal opportunity to work. Um, Harish says, whittling away the structure of our labor laws bit by bit, deliberate policy to create desperation in the labor community. Can you please read my super chat? Okay, I'm just going to go to the super chats. 1 second. So I think I missed a few. Harish, thank you so much for that super chat. Like I said, we've set a target. If we get 10 super chats of more than 100 rupees each, then we'll do an AMA as well. Shortcuts, can you please be a guest on my podcast? Okay, my team will get back in touch and we'll figure out how we can make that happen. Thank you for the super chat, though. It helps us hit our goal better. And then there's Karthik and there's Sujoy Sen Gupta. I think those are Singapore dollars. Thank you so much for that. So yeah, that's my response to Mr. Rajnath Singh saying you can achieve all of your goals here. You don't need to go overseas because we're not creating the jobs and we're not creating the lifestyle and we're not creating the kind of cities that will really attract people to India or attract people back to India and make people stay in India. So that's the challenge. Of course, there's Manoj who has said grooming gangs, lady. Okay, so there is the question of grooming gangs, which is being raised right now by Elon Musk and by, of all people, Andrew Tate in the UK. There is there have been reports, and this had come in, I think, about 10, maybe 7 years ago. There was a problem. It's popped up again where there are people who are chatting with underage girls, sort of pretending to be in relationships with them and then committing sexual assault against them. These are cases that are coming up in the UK. So obviously, no country is free of crime. Anoj Waifa, thank you so much for that super chat. I really appreciate it. Dr. Rajan, thank you for the super chat as well. Let me see how many we have. 1, 2, I am counting. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7. I think we need 3 more. If we can get 3 more super chats, we'll have hit our target, which is basically 3 more super chats. We'll have hit our target, which is basically a target of 10 in the course of this one video, so that we can. Oh, Aman, thank you. That's one more. So we need two more. So we'll host a special AMA as a when was America great? Actually, I'm not really interested in when America was great and what Trump is going to do with America. I'm more interested in what we are doing in our country, and what sort of structure we're building for and leaving for our children. That is something that I'm particularly interested in. Thanks, Manoj. I'm glad to have impressed you. Um, all right, so I'm gonna give it one more minute. I was watching this one report about the fact that Trump has apparently appointed some 5 billionaires to his cabinet and put them in charge of his cabinet, which really draws to a question of, is he making a government that is by the billionaire, for the billionaire, and what that will mean really for people who are poor within the US. Oh my God, Gary, thank you so much for that EMA, for that super chat. So we need one more, guys. We need one more to hit our target, and then we can have an EMA. We should probably do tomorrow around the same time so we can sit and talk about everything. And there's so much to talk about and so much going on. So honestly, I feel like we're now reaching this point in the history of the human race at this very moment in time where becoming rich and creating a profit right now trumps everything else. Trumps everything else. Which is that people are right now saying that in order to be rich, we can abandon the environment, we can abandon climate change, we can abandon labor laws, we can abandon human rights. It doesn't matter. The purpose is just to be rich. Aman says, talk about education. Your caste decides if you get a seat in college or not. Merit doesn't work here. Also, AMA, yes, it's been a very long time. This is a much longer conversation about, I think you want to talk about reservation, and we can do that conversation. And that's an important thing as well. Dufa says, funding for GPUs need to be talked about more. We're also behind in the AI race. As an undergrad researcher, I have no option but to pursue my PhD overseas. Manali says, what is the super chat? So, Manali, in the chat window, you see a little emoticon, like the smiley face. Next to that, there is a dollar bill. If you click on that dollar bill, you can basically buy a super sticker or a super chat, and that will pop up. There you go. Andrew, research funding sometimes makes studies abroad much more interesting. You get good job, you can support your family. In India, have a good life. All right, so I'm going to bring this conversation to a close, but thank you so much for joining me. And we won that supercharge target. Oh my God. All right, studying at an IIT, there's no standard mechanism to fund my trip to a tier 1 conference. We have to beg the alumni for funds and facilities. That's a really important thing. So, guys, like the stream. Try and join our membership. Thank you so much for your support. And thank you for achieving the 10 target of super chats. It's been awesome. We're going to be back tomorrow. We'll do that EMA at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you and have a really nice day.